Welcome to Jasiri. Welcome to another fantastic episode where we delve into the heart of Nigeria's social issues, spotlighting stories that matter to you and matter to all of us, conversations that we should be having, and situations we should know about. From education and healthcare to youth empowerment and economic reform, we've got it all right here on this exciting show. So Monday to Friday, we put up our thinking caps, we put on our concerned caps, we put on our complaining caps, all the caps that we can find, and we bring the issues that matter to you most in this society. So this is Jasiri, your lens on everything that happens in the country. But it's not about me, it's not a one-woman show. There's other beautiful ladies here, so hello ladies.
Hi.
I know.
Since you had to add beautiful, which is not professional.
It's not professional. It's not professional. Should I bring you flowers?
When Bianca was introduced?
Should I bring you flowers?
Well,
I know.
now, did you remember when Bianca was referred, when she was called for a ministerial appointment defense, and the man had to say she's beautiful?
The guy was literally like frothing at the mouth. It almost felt like he was going to fall down there and die.
Listen, that woman,
beautiful.
she's fine.
But she's fine, beautiful.
She's fine.
Well, Annie, I love what you said about Jasiri being a lens on, I think you said on a path to a better Nigeria.
Yes, something like that. I think that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, like a stronger Nigeria. And well, I know it's a tall order, guys. It is a tall order, but we try our best here on Jasiri because sometimes the stories we hear and the decisions that are being made by government officials are quite depressing. And so we're hoping that through talking like this, we can make a difference.
Yes.
Honestly, sometimes you'll be watching the mouth of your co-host and you'll be wondering that, are we, okay, is she speaking philosophically or prophetically? Because it has come to that. Half of the time when we speak, we're thinking that, are we thinking of an ideal in our heads? Or what is the reality of it? Or what we all hope for?
Yeah.
But we as a people, you know, every time we talk change, I am always torn that we can talk about ourselves individually, but do you think Nigeria is really ready for a change? Because sometimes I look at us that the government that we're criticizing is a reflection of the people themselves. Because some of the things that you see common Nigerians do, you're wondering that, what's the difference between you and the government?
Absolutely.
I don't know, because I don't know which side of the divide I am on, whether the government is ready for change or Nigerians are ready for change.
That's a good point.
Let's not start today on our high horses, at least. Let's do donkey.
Let's do
so that in case you want to fall down,
the fall will be too far.
Sister, put it here.
Let me do like blessings and ask you guys some questions. Yes. Today's question and answer.
Okay. Wow.
What core memory of yours would you say you can't forget? Either happy, sad, you know, whatever. What core memory, you know, something that, you know, just holds you down?
Oh la la. Yo.
There'll be quite a few, actually.
Yeah.
Do you remember? So
Quite a few.
I think I would start. I remember the only time my father ever beat me. The only time he ever beat me was when I was like, I think I was in, I don't know if I was in secondary school or primary school. You know when they buy you this new JVC video player?
Yeah.
Do you remember VHS?
Yes.
what?
VHS player. That will put cassette in. You never met it? Are we Methuselah on this table?
No, you're not the only one. Yo.
There was this video player, just like the DVD. Before the advent of the DVD.
I know VHS tapes.
Yeah, the tapes. Yeah, my father just bought us that VHS. We used to watch Indian films, you know, and he would admonish that nobody touches it, except he's at home.
Yeah.
And that is when me, almighty me, would want to watch a film. And I went to the school right directly in front of my house. My sister had a friend there. And I told her that my father had bought VHS decoder for us, or VHS player, and that we have Indian films. And it's very interesting that she should come and watch.
Oh, wow.
So I would play the video for her, and that was the day that the deed of evil would happen. And that is how they would take the light, and there's no way to eject the video cassette. That was how my father met it. Oh, God. And when they now asked me, I now said, as a lying child that is reformed now,
I don't know what happened.
I lied to my father that my sister's friend came and insisted that she wants to watch Indian film. And she would slot the cassette in and she would watch the film while I was just a willing participant.
An unwilling participant.
Yes, unwilling participant. And of course, they would unravel the story, and of course, it was a big lie. And my father would whoop me. That was the only knowledge,
memory that you have. I want to hear, Mama K, I want to hear yours, but I think we have a few reactions, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think
there are a few memories that some people want to share, some of our viewers. So let's take that, and then we'll come back to me and with core memories. When I jumped into the Indian Ocean with a life jacket on, snorkeling, and
mask
with my mask and fins, with zero swimming
skill.
God, I made it out alive. Almost drowned 2 minutes later. IG pictures that I never
posted.
Wow.
Wow, that was so silly.
Very silly.
But
first of all, you don't snorkel. You don't go snorkeling without any experience.
I stole my mother's money, like a transferred money from her account to my account, so I could buy cake for my boyfriend on his birthday. I got the beating
of my life when she found out.
Love make you
very stupid.
Walking out of my apartment
as it burned with
my daughter
on Thanksgiving 2021.
Wow, that's not a good memory.
I've been imagining how a restroom in an airplane, what it looks like since my primary school days. First time I was in a plane, and
a few minutes after takeoff.
Yeah. Oh.
I had to just go and have a look.
That's very honest. That's very cute. Wow. It's amazing how the little things that happen in the course of our lives. You think you've forgotten but the brain just takes it, stores it, and it actually creates the filter through which you do life going forward. Many people don't know, and it's a good thing when they're good memories. It's actually bad when they are like hurtful, abusive memories. Do you want to tell us your core memory?
Yeah, no, I just remember, like you said, there's been a couple, but I think I was in one of those bad spaces after my divorce, and my son came. I think I was crying. My son came and met me. You're a small boy. He came and met me. You know how you pat kids on the back? And he was patting me on the back and said, Mommy, don't cry. Don't cry. And after patting, he now used his hand to from tears, I began to laugh. He said, don't cry. Mommy, don't cry. Wait, I'll get you some water. And he paddles along to the kitchen. The cup of water he brought, by the time he reached, was half.
He had poured out.
I hugged the shaking out of that boy. I'm like, God.
Do you know something? Do you know that is such a reflection on your parenting of him? Because children don't know anything. They come here as like blank canvases, and it's the people around them that paint on it. Onto it. And for a child to show that kind of empathy and emotional maturity, it's reflective of what you've taught him.
Like at that point, I was just wondering, where does he think he's going? This one with his little legs. And he said, "Oh, we'll get you some water." And that's just one of the many memories. So when Lolo spoke about her dad, it made me remember that.
I have one. I don't know. Wait, Annie. Take it back. So I'm an animal lover. My mom is an animal lover as well. And so we grew up with like a lot of animals. I had 8 dogs growing, 8 Alsatians. Yes. There was a ram, an ewe. We had 2 parrots. We had a monkey. It was a zoo. And so one day we were driving. I can't remember where it was. I was so little. I was probably maybe 6 years old or 5 years old, and we were driving somewhere, and we stopped in traffic, and my mom was driving. And then we saw this little black bird on the side of the road, and the bird was obviously injured, so it was walking and hopping on one leg, and I think it had a broken wing. And so I said, Mommy, see the bird? And my mom says, and my mom literally parks. We come out of the car, I kid you not, if my sisters ever watch this, they'll know. We come out of the car, we pick the bird up, take the bird inside. I was holding the bird like this on my lap. A little bird. It was a blackbird. And we called it
A witch's bird.
We called it birdie nom nom.
Birdie nom nom.
Yes.
Birdie nom nom.
Kilo jebe. A blackbird. That in Africa we know that is a witch's
It's not
bird.
here. You people need to stop hurting animals. They're not witches. They're just animals.
Honestly.
The yarn is so. See, they're not
Birdie
witches.
nom nom. That means they kept that bird for some years.
Before we start here.
So please, everybody that takes on our Annie, just make sure that you are very equipped to run a zoo, because this ain't normal.
At the very least, you must love dogs. Must love dogs. All right, we're going to have to keep moving. You've had a bit of a taste tester. We're going to get into the main meal when we come back from this short break. We're going to put on our thinking caps and have a serious discussion about Nigeria's tax reforms. There has been recent pushback from the Northern Governors Forum, and that has put the issue of the tax reform right in our faces. So when we come back from the break, we're going to be speaking with Mr. Wale Ajayi, a partner and tax lead at KPMG. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
To the show, please join the conversation via social media platforms. We're at News Central TV. So today, like Annie said before the break, we're tackling one of Nigeria's most critical challenges, and that is tax reform. As the country seeks to boost economic growth and ensure sustainable development, reforming the tax system is essential to creating a fairer, more efficient economy. So let's dive into the complexities of Nigeria's tax policies, the barriers to effective collection, and the potential for a more inclusive tax framework. So our guest is an expert who can shed light on the strategies that could reshape Nigeria's tax landscape and make it work for everyone. Please welcome Wale Ajayi. He is partner and tax lead at KPMG. Wale, sir, welcome to Jasiri.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Welcome.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here.
We're happy to have you,
We're very
sir.
happy to have you. I know that
So, yeah.
taxation is a difficult topic to understand. That when we get, experts, industry experts like you, we do our very best to ask you all the questions that we can, hoping that you can shed as much light in the most base way so that everyday Nigerian can really understand what we're talking about, especially this new tax reforms that we have. So that I said that so that you can please come down to our level. Anyway, it is quite good to hear that Nigeria is poised for significant tax reforms. And as the National Assembly considers new tax bills that will revolutionize the country's tax collection system. I know the proposed legislation will halt revenue collection by federal agencies such as the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulation Commission and the Nigerian Customs Service, and designate, that is the Federal Inland Revenue Service, as the sole collector of federal taxes. So let's start from there, because all those things I read, you would have to explain it. There is obviously an attempt to streamline tax collection. What is the current setup? At least let us understand what the current setup is before we now move or pivot into this new system that is incoming.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. And I think it's very great. People need to understand that what we're trying to do now is not to merge agencies. What the government is trying to do is to harmonize tax, right? What we found out from experience that it's much easier, right, and less expensive, right, if you have, one single body collecting taxes. So what the government wants to do is to merge collection and reduce the risk of tax losses, right? So that's the whole idea. And hopefully our collection will become more efficient. As you know, in Nigeria today, we are facing a revenue crisis. We're not able to do all the things that we can do, but because we're not generating enough revenue. Now, the question is, do we have the capability and the capacity to actually generate more? Yes, we do. But because of the inefficiency in the system, and because of the fragmentation of the tax collection system, so what the government seeks to do now is to harmonize that collection so that we can actually become more transparent in the way we collect taxes. So that is really the essence of the reform that is being carried on, by government.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Ajayi. So one of the policies I think that's being pushed in this new tax reform is, if I'm not mistaken, that businesses that sort of turn a profit over a certain number, about I think 20 billion naira or so, have to pay a minimum of 15% in taxes. It's going to bring me to the question I want to ask you now, because taxing is a very complex topic, and a lot of people don't actually understand it. A lot of regular people don't know why we pay taxes, where the taxes go, who is responsible for collecting these taxes, why are there so many different bodies collecting the taxes, who is actually doing it legally and illegally, and all of those sorts of things. So it's interesting to me, and I want to understand, why do we see so many agencies of government collecting taxes? And again, I want to focus on, are we trying to generate revenue? Are the taxes for the government to do things that we don't necessarily have to see or know? We just need to be told that things have been done. Yeah. Because if you're looking at the amount of money that is supposedly generated from taxes, and you're looking at the state of the country, the state of the economy, the state of the common man, you can see that there's a lot of disparity. So please, if you don't mind, can you shed some light on that, sir?
Okay, thank you so much, Anee, for that question. I think the way to first look at it is that if we need to provide the basic services that we need in this country, we need money. And the question, of course, is, where does that money come from? There are basically two sources. Is either you get the money from exports, or from taxes, or by borrowing. Now, in Nigeria, the problem we've had is because we've not been collecting enough taxes, adequate taxes. So we've had to borrow. And because we've had to borrow, we need to pay back what we borrowed, right? So all the money that we're collecting by way of taxes or revenue, right, we're using it to pay the interest on the loans that we've taken. We're using it to pay salaries. So that's an issue. So there is no doubt in Nigeria today that we have a revenue crisis. And that problem is not limited only to Nigeria, I must say that. Yes, even though Nigeria has a low tax to GDP ratio, 2-3 weeks ago, the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK, Angela Reeve, made an announcement about how the UK need to plug the deficit in public finances. They're going to raise about 40 billion pounds, right, just to be able to raise revenue to provide the basic services. The same thing, the South African finance minister also talking about, how do they increase taxes? So we need to provide, we need education, right? We need healthcare, we need good roads. All those things will come from taxes. Now, Nigeria's situation is a bit unique, right? Because you and I still have to provide, those services, because we don't see the impact. We don't see where government is spending the money. And so there is reluctance, there is apathy on the part of Nigerians to pay taxes, because they pay taxes, they can't see anything. And this is where good governance, comes in. Right? And that is one of the things that we need to emphasize. If people can see where the money is going to, they will willingly pay taxes. Now, the third part of your question that you raised is about the minimum tax, right? There is a global reform of taxation that is going on around the world, and it all started from this story of digital companies. So you have all these big companies, right, that, the way the tax system used to work is that if you have a company that doesn't have a physical presence in a country, that company will not pay taxes, right, based on the law then, right? So you need to have a physical presence. But you can have Apple, you can have Facebook generating enough revenue, right, without even having physical presence in Nigeria. And so the question then arose, how do you ensure fairness? How do you ensure equity? How do you bring those people, those companies, into the tax net of where the revenue is generated from, right? And so that starts a concept, that is called BEPS, which is Basic Erosion Profit Shifting Schemes, right? And what the government, what countries have agreed is that those companies must pay 15% minimum tax. Now, Nigeria has not signed up to that. And the way it works is that if a company doesn't pay that minimum tax of 15%, right, their host country then reserves the right to tax the difference. And so what the Nigerian government is now doing or wants to do is to ensure that we don't lose revenue to the home countries of those companies. So we've then said, those big companies, multinationals, or companies that are big enough that have at least 20 billion in turnover, then need to pay a minimum tax of 15%. So it's just a way of ensuring that we don't lose money to other countries, right? So I think I've answered the three aspects of the question that you put, Annie.
All right, thank you so much, sir. I think that makes a bit of sense, more sense to us now. We're going to continue this conversation. We're just going to take a quick break and stay with us. We will be back with Mr. Ajayi for more on tax reform. Stay with us.
All right, guys, welcome back. You're watching Jasiri, and we're live on all our social media platforms. Before the break, we're discussing Nigeria's tax climate. And of course, our guest is still with us, Mr. Wale Ajayi. Very interesting points you've raised. Thank you for staying with us. Now, moving on, I'm interested in the change in the country's tax administration system, which is led by, of course, Taiwo Oyedele. He's the chairman of the Presidential Tax Committee, who we've also had on Jasiri. Now, my question would be, what has the impact been of such haphazard administration of our tax system?
Okay, thank you. First and foremost, because we have a revenue crisis, and that is why the government has set up the Committee on Policy and Fiscal Reform, led by Taiwo, like you've alluded to. We are not generating enough revenue. That's the problem in Nigeria today, right? When you look at our tax to GDP ratio, it's just less than 11%, when we need at least 15%. Right, for government to be able to provide the basic services that they need, and so what the government has committed to doing is that they want to increase that tax to GDP ratio to about 18% by 2026, and then actually also increase income to GDP ratio to 30% by 2026, right? And then again, how do you then strengthen tax administration system in Nigeria? How do we ensure that tax can be a sustainable source of revenue rather than borrowing? So that is why the government has embarked on the reform. And of course, for us to be able to eliminate all ambiguities in our tax law. Those are the issues that typically will cause disputes between taxpayers and tax authorities. And when you have disputes and cannot be resolved within the reasonable length of time, you have to go to the courts or the administrative panel. It takes time. And of course, government is the worst for it, right? So what government is trying to do is to create an environment that is equitable, that is fair, and that is transparent, right? And that is what all the reforms, are all about. And hopefully we will be able to encourage Nigerians to, on their own, pay taxes. Just make tax happen, right? Without you being forced to pay your taxes. But that, of course, relies on good governance, so which government also needs to provide. So that is what the reform is all about.
Thank you very much, sir. The ongoing initiatives of the PFPTRC attempts to reform the fiscal architecture of Nigeria, beginning with the national tax policy, which will be replaced by a more robust national fiscal policy on fair taxation, that is responsible borrowing and sustainable spending. Has taxation in Nigeria been fair up till this time, in your view?
I like that you're laughing, sir.
Who has borne the brunt of taxation in Nigeria? Because, before we move on to the new, we should consider what the old was like.
Exactly. Okay, I think it depends on who you're speaking to, right? If you're speaking to people like you that, that pay taxes and you cannot see the impact of what you're paying for, and you still need to cough out money, to provide the basic necessities like light, obviously, the issue is not being fair. And then when you also consider the fact that there are so many people out there in the informal market, they are making so much money and they're not paying anything by way of taxes, right? Of course, to you, it will not be fair. And then when you consider the people that are high net worth, they're so rich, mega rich, and when you look at what they're paying, it's next to nothing. Right? Obviously, you consider the taxes not being fair. And if you're a Nigerian company, working in the digital space, and you see all those big digital companies, paying little amount of taxes relative to what you pay, you say it is not fair, right? So when you look at the tax policy, right, Nigerian tax policy, there is really nothing wrong with the policies. The policies documented all the principles that we need to adhere to when you're setting up a tax system. It talks about equity. It talks about fairness. It talks about certainty, right? And it must be easy for you to pay. So those policies are there. It talks about the need for government not to apply tax in the retroactive basis, right? So those things are there. It talks about the need for us not to have, multiple taxes, right, in Nigeria, right? So it is there. But the question is always with the implementation. A policy is as good as how it is implemented. So between you and me, the question is, yes, you can have a fanciful policy. The question is, how will it be implemented? And do we have the willing, are we willing to be able to bring in the high network into the tax net? So those are the issues. What are the things we need to put in place to ensure that everyone pays their own fair share of the taxes? And how do we ensure that even after we pay the taxes, the government then uses the taxes judiciously, right? So those are the issues. So it all depends on who you're speaking to. But if you ask me, I would say, no, it's not been fair. But that is why, again, we're embarking on this reform to ensure fairness and equity to everyone as much as possible.
Wow, very robust.
Mr. Ajayi, speaking about who's borne the brunt of paying taxes this entire time, and the question of it being not particularly fair, it would make it understandable that some people evade paying their taxes, and we know that this is an issue. In fact, I think I was reading somewhere that one of the things that the president wants to do is he wants to work with some foreign bodies, I think the UN being one of them, if I'm not mistaken, to sort of come up with ways to curb tax evasion, because people are running away from paying their taxes. One, when the taxes are too high, but also people are not aware that there's certain things that they have to do as a citizen. So based on that, there has been some talk about the value-added tax being raised. I think it's currently 7.5% now.
Yes,
it's going to be raised to 10% sometime next year, between now and next year or so. So from the raise that is going to happen, how exactly is the government going to ensure that it's going to be fair? Because when this news came out, it didn't land well. People have been, kicking against it. Even the people who probably don't even pay tax as well, they've been kicking against it. So how exactly is the government going to, first of all, make this stick properly and balance raising the tax with the people who usually suffer from paying the tax?
Thank you so much, Annie. I think the way to look at it first is that anytime there is a reform in any country, there will always be controversies, there will always be issues. So it is not unexpected that the issue with VAT has generated the most controversy, right? There's so many provisions in the reform bill, but everyone is talking about the VAT. Let me try and break it down. So currently, in the way VAT is distributed in Nigeria, is that the federal government of Nigeria would take 15% of the VAT that is generated. The states would take, and federal capital would take 50%, and local government then would take the balance of 35%. That is how it is distributed, right? Then the 50% that goes to the state, right, it has to be shared among all the 36 states and federal capital. And so what they do is that they use derivation, and 20% of that is based on derivation. And then 50% is based, on equally on, equal distribution, and the balance of 30% is then shared, right, based on population, right? So those are the ways those things are done. But when you look at a state like Lagos, right, where they generate so much of the VAT and they collect so little, right, relative to other countries. So people are saying, first and foremost, let's look at the way we actually share VAT. VAT should not be based on the fact that a company, the headquarter company, is the one that is remitting the tax. It should be based on where the goods are supplied and where the service is consumed. So if the services are performed in Lagos and consumed in Lagos, then Lagos should get the lion's share of the VAT. And so what they propose is that 60% now will be based on derivation, right? And of course, that raises a whole lot of issues. That if I've been collecting this much, by giving 60% to derivation instead of 20%, then that means the amount of VAT that I will collect to my that will accrue to my state will be lower. But what they've also done, right, to be able to address that issue, is that federal government is also giving out 5% of their own share. Instead of 50%, they will not, instead of 15%, they will take 10%, and the state will now collect 55%. So that they use that to balance that. So that is the issue with VAT, right? The second issue, of course, is the fact that, right, when you look at every state in Nigeria feels that, apart from VAT, they must also have their own consumption tax. So in Lagos State, for example, will have the hospitality tax. When you go to a hotel, restaurant, you pay taxes, right? But the question is, VAT has already covered the field of play. It's a consumption tax. So there should be no more consumption tax, right? And so that is what the committee is trying to, the bill is all about. And hopefully common sense will prevail with education, with enlightenment, right? People will understand that they will not be worse off than they were before, because it's easier to collect VAT, right, than income tax. You talked about, tax evasion, which is very prime, right? You see people that earn income, they don't declare their income, right? But for VAT or any consumption tax, once you consume, you pay the taxes. So everywhere in the world, right, everybody is shifting from income tax to consumption tax because it is easier and it is cheaper. And that is what the government also wants to do. That is why the VAT rate will be going up and the income tax is going down, to compensate people, okay? And the third aspect of your question about dealing with evasion. Now, Nigeria has the ability, Nigerian tax authorities, via what we call the automatic exchange of information, they have the power and the opportunity to request information from about taxpayers, Nigerian taxpayers, from any tax authority that are signatories, to that agreement. So I can tell you today that tax authorities in Nigeria actually have information about what Nigerians are earning, in other countries, right? But the question is, how do you then harness and implement and use the information to be able to increase the tax yield in Nigeria? So we're in for interesting time. And of course, with the right use of technology, I'm sure that tax collection, tax yield in Nigeria will go up, because every country in the world doesn't want to leave money on the table, and they're looking for ways to grow their revenue so that they can provide the basic services that their citizens need.
All right, Mr. Ajayi, thank you so much. I know tax is a complicated subject, and you're doing your best to explain it as basically as possible. But let's move now towards the factors that actually hamper tax collection in Nigeria. So, Zak Adedeji, that's the presidential advisor on revenue, has said that previously some of the challenges that hamper tax collection include multiple taxes and revenue collection agencies, the high prevalence of tax evasion, a complex tax system, and poor accountability in the use of tax revenue. So I said 3 years ago, that's 2021, Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio was 10.8%, one of the lowest among countries of similar economic size one. This is also below the IMF recommended ratio of 12% and World Bank's minimum ratio of 15%. So my question is, what is the type of problem Nigeria has? Does Nigeria have a tax to GDP problem or a tax to revenue problem?
Okay. Okay, you mean revenue to GDP problem. Okay, so the issues we have a revenue to GDP problem, and we also have tax to GDP problem. Now, tax feeds into revenue. There are so many other sources of revenue, but the major source that is very easy to predict is tax revenue. So let's use a simple example. So if you say a country has a tax to GDP ratio of about 11%, what that does is that it enables planning. So once you know the size of your GDP, you can estimate how much money you are able to collect from taxes. So you're likely to collect from taxes in that year, right? So it's very easy. Compared to exports or crude oil sales. No, Nigerian sales crude oil. We currently produce about 1.5 though million barrels of oil per day, though recent thing that the NUPLC share has disclosed that our revenue, our production has gone up to 1.8. Let's say it's 1.8 that we produce. Now, the production amount is not certain. It depends on so many factors. That's one. Number two, the price itself per barrel is not certain. It's something that is outside your control. So you cannot estimate with certainty, right? Unlike tax, how much revenue you collect. And so that is why everybody is focusing on growing their tax revenue, because it's very easy to predict. It's very easy to determine how much you can raise from that. Now, what are the problems we have in Nigeria? I think the biggest problem for me is what we've spoken about, and you guys spoke about it when you started, is about governance, pure governance. When people can't get value for what they're paying for, they don't see any reason why they pay taxes. In fact, when you do conduct a poll of Nigerians, they will say to you, why should we pay taxes? Because after all, I am paying for my own electricity, I'm paying for my water, I'm paying for my security, I'm paying for transport, I'm paying everything. So why should I pay taxes? So if we don't have good governance, right, I'm afraid it's going to be difficult, no matter the quality of the reform we put in place, that for us to change, and generate enough money, because the mindset of the people has got to change. When you look at the Nordic countries, the people from the Danes and the Swedes, they willingly pay taxes because they understand, that the government will use the revenue for a good purpose, and they can change the government. Now, we don't have that ability. Yes, we do have, but we're limited. So that is one issue that we have, poor governance. The second issue that we have in Nigeria is that the administration themselves do not have the capability and the capacity, right, to follow through and to generate more revenue. They don't have enough staff, right, and they're not using technology. And this is what the government is trying to do, especially the Federal Inland Revenue Service and some of the state internal revenue service. They are investing big in technology to be able to bring more people into the tax net and reduce the cost of collection, right? And of course, the other thing, you spoke about the multiple taxes that we have in Nigeria. It's just unbelievable because the states are broke, local governments are broke. So they're looking for every way of generating revenue unconventional way. When you travel across, borders, across, states in Nigeria, you're likely going to see somebody mounting some roadblock, asking for TV license, asking for that kind of levies or fees. Right? That is not the way, to generate revenue. So when you have multiple taxes, it's going to affect your ability to generate more taxes. And of course, investors will not come, right? And of course, the question, of course, is that you have policy, like I've said, that we're not willing to implement. The policy talks about things that government must do, but those are the things that we don't do in Nigeria. So there's so many issues that, that are affecting our ability to generate enough revenue from taxes. And this is what the reform is all about, to fix those problems as much as possible. And obviously also to spend time creating awareness, among citizens that when it comes to taxes, it's not a quid pro quo. So it's not a function that, government must first provide road, water before I pay my taxes, but rather everyone must first pay their taxes, then government will do what is needed. That's the contract that we have with government. And if government doesn't perform, every 4 years, we have the ability to change government. And that is what we need to exercise.
All right, Mr. Wale, we want to press deeper into this value-added tax debacle. We'd like to take a look at the cause of the recent pushback from the Northern Governors Forum. The governors are opposed to the bill, especially the proposed amendment to the distribution of the value-added tax to a derivative-based model. In a statement calling on the National Assembly to reject the bill, the forum noted that the contents of the bill against the interests of the North and other subnationals. They've flagged the issue of the amendment, pointing out that companies remit VAT using the location of their headquarters and tax office and not where the services and goods are consumed. I would like to hear your take and break this down. What does this amendment mean for the subnationals? What does it mean exactly?
Thank you so much, Anee, for that. I think the problem has to do with enlightenment and with education. A lot of people do not really understand what the amendment is all about. So in one vein, they look at the fact that the basis of sharing the amount of VAT that accrued to start has changed, and to VAT to state has changed. So let me just put it in a simple basis. Currently, the way we share VAT revenue is that 20% is based on derivation, like I've said before. 50% is based on equality, and 30% on population, right? That is how it is shared. It has nothing, right, to do with, where the VAT is actually generated from, right? And again, when we share the current VAT, we look at the areas where the taxes are paid, where the VAT is paid, not so much as in where the VAT is generated from. So for example, if you have a company that is based, say, in Ogun State, right? And all the VAT, they remit the VAT in Ogun State. That's the headquarters, right? Ogun State will collect a bit more, right? But if then the consumption takes place in Lagos, Lagos State will collect less. And so to reduce that inequity, so the committee has said, let's base derivation, right, on two issues. Number one, the value must go up from 20% to 60%. Then number two, we need to change the model. It's going to be based on where the activities are generated. So the whole idea is to get all states, right, to be able to grow the economy. There are so many activities in those states, even in the north, right, that we're not exploiting. When you talk about mineral resources, they're there. So it's very easy for them to create an environment where investors can come in and develop those states. But because we've always relied on the distribution from the center, and we don't want to change, right? And so nobody wants to go the extra mile to increase the internal source of revenue. We've always dependent on the handout from the center. So we want the status quo to remain. But I think when they understand what government is trying to do, everybody will align. And because what the government also has done, or what they propose to do, is to then give up 5% of the VAT revenue that comes to federal to the states. So to augment how much the state will get. So I think the issue is explaining the principles of what has been done, so that people have a better understanding. I am convinced and I'm sure that by the time they sit down to explain how these things work, right, that is for the benefit of the state to actually grow their economy in a sustainable manner, everybody will align to it. So that's really the issue with the VAT. But like I said, the controversy is not unexpected, because anytime you have a tax, and when you embark on tax reforms, there will always be issues. All we then need to do is to explain better, so people have a better understanding of what the issues are.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so very much. We could be talking about this for the next hour or 2 hours, and we would like to keep you that long, sir, but obviously we cannot, because we have come to the end of our time here. Mr. Wale Ajayi, thank you so very much for joining us and giving us such an insightful conversation and helping us understand a little bit better what our taxes are about. Thank you for coming on the show, sir.
Sir.
And thank you so much, everyone. Do have a good morning.
Thank you.
All right.
I think this is just, I don't know, tax is such a complicated subject.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I studied accountancy. It's complicated. I struggle with taxation.
Honestly, because it has to do with percentages of this, value this, and there's so many taxation. Let's just hope that this new reform will do what they intended to do. Because if it does do what is intended, honestly, it's for the betterment of everyone.
Absolutely.
So that those that earn more can pay more.
Absolutely.
And those that didn't even pay at all can see a reason to pay. And those that can get, some tax incentives or...
Yeah, they can.
Yeah, they can, so that they can add more value to their businesses.
So I would
know
say,
that, sorry, Annie, do you know that every time we've talked to people on our table, we always say we're going to have to talk to them again. Like, the time is never really
It's never enough. It's never enough. I think that's the, that's one of the qualities of a good conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it can jump from here to here to here to here, and it just keeps going, and you don't realize that so much time has passed.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the time, then you're having a bad conversation. With regards to the tax reform, the general consensus, and I think hope, is that things will actually be done the way we are told they're going to be done. We're going to be waiting. Yeah, we're going to wait with bated breath.
Yep.
The devil is in the detail, but we're hoping that one of these days we won't have something bad to say.
Oh, we're hoping that. Oh, really, we need that. We really need that.
Yeah,
Refreshing.
government, we need a win. We're rooting for you guys. Just give us something to root for. It's time for us to end the show today.
Yep. Yeah.
We'll see you guys again tomorrow, same time, same station. We're making way for Business Edge now. Stay tuned and bye-bye.